And hello and welcome to another episode of the Young Tongues podcast. My name is Barbara Fountain and I'm the founder and CEO of the Young Tongues, a peer-to-peer support group for young tongue cancer patients from around the globe. Thank you so much for returning today's excellent and fabulous episode. You will hear my voice sound slightly different to usual because I am nursing a cold. So I'm hoping I will not be sharing any of my germs with you. Instead, I am looking forward to sharing my fabulous guests with you. Another amazing member of our Young Tongues community, Jennifer Alexander. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us. Now, we like to get to know our guests beyond the cancer diagnosis. So could you kindly introduce yourself to our listeners so they get to know who Jennifer Alexander is?
Hi, I'm Jen. Most people call me Jen. Outside of tongue cancer, I just graduated college, actually. Back May 2nd, I was an administrative assistant. I got an accounting degree or a business degree, so now I'm an accountant. I like concerts. I like travel. I like talking about cancer. I know that most people don't, but cancer is one of my favorite subjects. Trying to change the narrative on that. But really, I just like to have fun, hang out with my friends. I've never been married, don't have any kids. So this is sort of my life, I guess.
Amazing. I love it. We've got a bit of theme going on with our guests that we seem to really like to party. So I really think we all need to get together one day. Jen, just remind us, where are you? Where are you
I'm in
based?
Marietta, Georgia, in the United States. So
Amazing. Thank you.
just outside of Atlanta, if you know where Atlanta is, just 25 minutes outside of Atlanta.
Amazing. Another place I haven't been. So I'm gonna start putting pins in my map and
Yeah,
then
you need to
having a massive tour of the US one day.
listen. I'm coming out to London next September, so we might
Oh,
need to talk
Jen.
about that offline. So it's actually going to be my graduation travel to myself, my trip to myself. So me and my sister are coming to London next September.
Amazing. And you're joining us for our mouth cancer awareness walk, I assume.
I mean, if we're there, I would 100% do it. We'll
Absolutely.
we'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that offline. Right, let's go back.
Yes.
Oh, you can hear this cold. My brain's all
Yeah.
over the place.
It's
Let's go back to Jen. So take us back to the moment when you felt something wasn't right. Like, how old were you? Where were you? At what stage of your life were you? And what happened?
So I started having, if you guys know what leukoplakia is, it's the precursor. It's the white, like kind of like a blister. It's
Mm-hmm.
called
Mm-hmm.
leukoplakia. I had that starting back in my early 20s because I was also diagnosed with HPV at the same time. So it was there, and of course, I did everything you could do to get cancer. So at that point, there was no pinpointing anything, and they didn't know anything about tongue cancer way back when, or the vaccine. So I started having leukoplakia issues in my early 20s and had a lot of biopsies, a lot of biopsies. Every time I went to the dentist, I had to get another biopsy. So by the time I turned 37, this was in 2009. It was full blown cancer. I had a tumor on my tongue. It was about 1.5 centimeters. I went to the dentist, and sort of in my heart, I knew that it was cancer because I'd already sort of been doing the research with my leukoplakia, but I was sort of hoping it would be like an STD, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Come to find out it was an STD, HPV. So 37, I had surgery. I was diagnosed like on a Tuesday. I had surgery on Friday, they just took it off, and that was it. So fast forward 2019 to 2017. And if you go back in all of my diagnoses, you'll see a traumatic personal event in my life that I believe that is why the stress caused it to come back. So in 2019 or 2009, I lost my job. In 2017, I lost my dad. So those two, and I didn't even want to have surgery because my dad was dying, and I didn't want to take away from that experience to have my own problems. So, but of course, dad passed, and very very soon after that, I had surgery. So then in 2019, I would say I was living the best life I had ever lived in my entire life. Um, I was in a really, what I thought was a really good relationship. I was very, very happy. I was in college, and we broke up, and I got cancer again. After, and I'd learned, he'd been unfaithful. It was very stressful, a whole lot of stress. Um, 2019 is when I decided to take my own health into my own hands. And I knew I needed something different than what I was getting. And I was having surgery by an ENT, which I thought was okay. What I needed was an oncologist.
Hmm.
So after that third surgery, and after I went to my checkup that day, I got in the car that day and decided that I was going to call someone else. I called Emory in Atlanta, which is it's a really really state of the art university hospital where they do teaching and stuff. So I called them. I was crying, and I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know what to do, but I've been doing this research. Can you help me? And she was like, "Baby, we can get you in Friday." So I
Hmm.
went to that appointment, and I was like renewed with hope, really, because I'd been living, I'm going to cry. I'd been living this life for so long.
It's all right. It's fine. Well, you've been living with this since you're 20, right? First thing that happens,
Yes.
and you're now on your third
Yeah,
or
I'm in my
fourth?
40s at this
Fourth.
point. I'm
Hmm.
47. Um, so I called Emory. We made the appointment, and I kind of knew, like you, I knew I didn't need radiation chemo. I didn't want to have it because I know what that does. I have a whole group of people. I understand what that does. I did not want to do it. So we set up my surgery, my big surgery with the flap and all of that for March of 2020. Um, I had that surgery right during COVID. Like COVID started. The one good thing about that is I got to heal in complete silence. Like I got to heal. All of my other friends were staying at home. You know what I'm saying? And so did I. So it wasn't like everybody else was doing things that were so exciting that I didn't get to do.
Hmm.
Um, but I had that surgery, and I will never forget the very first checkup that I had after that. Went into the doctor's office. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "You don't need radiation." And I was like, yes, yes. I cried so hard because I was so happy. And I was like, you know what? I probably would have done it anyway, um, just to save my life. I didn't want to, but my stepdad died 2 weeks before my surgery, and so I decided at that point, if I had to, I would do it. And then I ended up I didn't have to do it. But
And that's the one thing we've been modelled with the young tongues is that nobody wants to do radiation or
yeah,
chemo,
mm-mm.
but we know enough people who've been through it and come through it,
Yes,
and see them on the other side. So we all know that if push comes to shove, we can.
yes,
So
yes,
yeah, no, but you didn't have to.
right.
So yes.
So yeah, so I look at my cancer diagnoses as um, God and luck, and he was trying to get my attention. I wasn't listening. I did not want to be a poster child for cancer. I did not want that job. I didn't tell people, like, if you met me after that first and second surgery, you never knew I had surgery. You never knew I had cancer because I didn't want people to look at me and be like, "Oh, that's so sad." Because
Mhm.
I'm not, that's not who I am. I'm not a sad person, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm a fighter. So, um, but it's, it's changed me in a way that's made me a better person. Um,
Mm.
I'm not perfect. I'm not ugly, but I do. It's like I want to see things. I want to smell everything and see everything and not rush and, to get to the next appointment or to get to the next, day. I really, really tried to. I'm a very impatient person. Cancer taught me to be patient. And,
Mm. Oh.
those are the things that I thank God for. I'm still here. I'm still fighting. I'm a cancer advocate. I spent yesterday in Atlanta telling my story to a bunch of, healthcare professionals and college students because of HPV, the dangers of HPV and cancer, and how to protect yourself and the vaccine. So, I do feel in a lot of ways lucky that I got
Mm. Mm.
horses to be an
Oh.
advocate and a poster child for cancer.
The
Not
job nobody wanted.
no, no.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
So I'm just looking at my notes because the one thing that struck me or strikes me about you is that your story is so epic, and it's actually quite unique in our community because we're a new community, right? We
Yes,
didn't
yes,
exist
yes, right.
until 3 or so years ago.
Yeah.
So actually we don't have that many people, or we have more people in our community who are newly diagnosed than people have been um come back in this challenge for a long time. And like you said, it's been since you were 20, so 26 years,
32 years.
32 years. That's how bad my maths is.
Yeah.
So 32 years, tongue cancer has been part of your life.
It
Um,
was tongue cancer before it was tongue. I had it before anyone
mm.
really knew what it was doing.
And do you know, is the leukopenia, is that
Like
connected to is that connected with HPV, or is that a whole separate illness in itself?
leukopenia is the precursor to cancer. So
Mm.
it's when you know that there's a problem. That's why when you go to the dentist and they put that thing in your mouth to like look all over, that is
Mm.
what they're looking for. And I had that
Mhm.
immediately. I mean, it was
Immediately.
it's it not just HPV, but it definitely does. It's the precursor to cancer. So that's what they
Cancer.
look for, when they're looking in your mouth.
Yeah. And but we do also have to say not everyone who's had tongue cancer also has had
See,
leukoplakia.
I did not realize that.
Yes,
I
that
did not
because
realize that.
folks, yeah, I don't know if maybe people have had it and then not noticed that. I need to get I
Yeah,
need to get someone, an expert
yeah.
on or something on that. But as far as I'm aware,
Okay.
not from the little that has been explained to me is that the precancerous conditions like leukoplakia, and there is more than one because I know there's at least two other ones. Um, not everyone in our community has had
Okay.
those, or
Okay.
maybe we just don't know enough about it.
Right.
That should be
Right.
added to our list of things to
And
find
it
out.
could be that a tumor came up and no one noticed it before. I mean, I don't know. That's a good
Yeah.
question, though.
Yeah, or I think sometimes with some of the tongue things, they can come and then disappear again.
Mhm.
So they're not a consistent, but that maybe at one point of your life it was visible and then it sort of
Right.
hides itself. And
Right.
then,
Right.
yeah, in plain English, told by a non-medical
Yeah.
person. This is how misinformation starts. Right.
Yes.
We'll go after that in another episode. But what I wanted to ask is, and you've reflected really nicely on this, is you've had this really long journey. One of the things I wanted to ask is when you switched from an ENT to what sounds like a multidisciplinary team of having different people involved. Um, so I know American healthcare is different, but originally the ENT, did they not want to refer you to a multidisciplinary team, or what was the stop there to progress that to get second opinions, or so to speak?
So this is what, and I went to actually go see him after I had my big surgery to show him um, that he should have done that. He should have referred me earlier. But I was going through it when no one else knew what it was. He
Hmm.
didn't know what to do.
Hmm.
He was not trained in tongue cancer or HPV or you know what I'm saying? It's like they are now. but back
Mm.
then they were not. Uh, the second time, I think there is a sense of him that did not want to maim me,
Mm.
and I
Mm.
think that that's what was in his head. And I understand that. I'm not gonna judge that, but at the same time, I would have had less taken off had I gone, you know,
Earlier.
beginning.
Yeah.
So by
More
the
invasive earlier, but
yes, so by the time I got there, my tongue was already 25% gone. So then they had to take another 50. So I would have been 25% better off, had we done it. But I also believe that I went through this journey so I could tell you guys, do
mm.
it the way I did it. So now I tell people, don't do it the way I did it the first time. Do it the way I'm telling you to do it now. I do
Mm.
think it was my own like practice journey, so that I really could understand it, go through the motions of why we don't do it this way. Um, I don't know. He does know now that he should refer
Yeah.
it out.
Yeah, and also I guess it's also I always find it incredibly difficult for clinicians because they have to weigh this up between, they see us as young people, and they you want to make sure you get all of the cancer,
Hmm.
but at the same time you don't want to cause more harm
Right.
than you have to.
Right.
And let's be honest, all the treatments available to us, and
Hmm.
that includes the surgery, the radiation, the chemo, the immunotherapy. They're invasive, harmful treatments. Yes, they'll make us survive, but they come at a cost.
Yes.
So I guess that's always a very difficult balance to strike. But one thing that you've mentioned is HPV, and we haven't actually spoken about HPV on this podcast really at all, if anecdotally. So for our listeners, HPV being the right human papillomil. Oh God, never
Human,
every time.
human papilloma virus.
Human papillomavirus,
Yes.
um, and it's really common, and it can be passed on through actually lots of different ways.
Hmm.
But the most famous way of it passing on is through known as an STD, sexual transmitted
Hmm.
disease, um, and a lot of, what shall we call it? There's a lot of stigma that comes with
Very much
HPV.
so.
So how have you, especially you've been through this for a long time,
Mhm.
how have you felt about HPV in the different stages, and how do you feel about it now?
This is what we talked about yesterday. There is a stigma there. The one thing I would love to do is change the narrative on cancer and HPV. Um, I obviously was, 17, 18, 19 years old having sex. I had no idea about any of this. He had no idea about any of this. I did not ask for this. He did not ask to give this to me. This is not our fault. 90%, it's almost 100 at this point, of the population has HPV. It's only lucky for you that you got the non-cancer causing one. I got the cancer causing one. Um, and unfortunately got both oral and vaginal HPV. So I was like, I'm lucky to still be here, really. But it's not my fault. And I think I never thought it was my fault. It's never hindered my relationships. It doesn't, men don't, are not grossed out by me. There are definitely some people out there that are, but I have not run into that at all. And I really think I own myself. I own what I've done. I own who I am. I've made plenty of mistakes. I did not deserve to get cancer because of it, but
Mm,
I got cancer. So let's make the best of this.
mm,
Let's make the life. And I spend my time telling people like STDs are, most of them are curable. Some of them are not. We have to protect our children and ourselves by getting the vaccine that will eradicate HPV, and giving them to your kids at an early age, because they're not going to tell you when they're having sex. Okay,
Mhm.
so if they're having sex at 12, which of course we don't like, but they're
The reality is they do.
and they're at risk. They're at risk. And then we talk a little bit about those children that are being forcibly abused. Okay, so they're definitely not asking for it, right? So what about those 7, 8, 9 year olds?
Mm.
They have to be protected. It even if you don't think or don't know or it's never going to happen to you, it does happen. It does happen. So my job is to make sure that the kids around me are protected and everybody has the information they need to protect their own children.
Mhm.
So it's,
Absolutely.
it's
Absolutely. And I can imagine the conversation has gotten harder for you in the States, with the whole COVID vaccine and in general, this mistrust of vaccines. And to be fair, I had the same discussions with my parents. My mum is very skeptical of
Mhm,
vaccines. We've had an experience within our family which led her to believe that one of the vaccines was at fault for an illness within our family,
mhm.
which isn't the case. It's that famous article. It's just not factually correct, um, and but somehow it's really difficult to talk to people
I know.
who are really, really
I
convinced
know.
that vaccines in general are just all harmful, and it's just like, oh
Yeah.
god, no, I don't know how to explain this to you.
So
um
this is kind of how I see it. First of all, the COVID vaccine came out, 3 years ago, right? Or whatever, 4 years ago. The HPV vaccine has been out for over 30 years. Okay. I am, I, I believe in vaccines. Okay. I believe in vaccines. I don't have kids. I don't have to worry about, the, drawbacks or whatever. But that vaccine would have saved my tongue. Period. Period. And what I would like to do for your child, for your teenager, for your young adult, is to save your child. I try not to get into the political part of those vaccines. I feel like you get an infection, okay, when you're 17, and by the time you're 37, you have cancer. So, what is that COVID infection going to do to us in 30 years?
mhm,
Okay. So it's a gamble. It's your life. You do what you want. But I guarantee you, you get the flu, you'll get the vaccine.
mhm.
You get
Yeah,
pneumonia, you'll get the vaccine. You get what's the shingles, you'll get the vaccine.
yeah.
But unfortunately, with tongue cancer, it's too late. It's too late after it's happened. You can get the vaccine for HPV after you've had cancer to keep you from getting another form of it. But to me, it's like the vaccine, do your research. Do your research. It's been out for over 30 years. I sat right next yesterday to an HPV researcher who's been researching this for 25 years.
Mm.
So do your research.
Yeah, and it's really important to say that HPV related cancers, because it's a whole group of
It
cancers.
is.
It's
Yes, it is.
tongue, oropharyngeal, then also the one nobody talks about, which is anal cancer. And I do
Yes.
think we need to give anal cancer a shout out
Me
because they
too.
really never get a shout
Me
out.
too. We talked about
Um,
cancer yesterday. Yes.
yeah. And then obviously the most obvious one, which is the one that it's used to market it at, is the cervical cancer.
Yep.
Um, and the numbers in terms of research, and I think most of it is sort of cervical cancer based, is that this vaccine has the potential to eradicate
Mhm.
5 different cancer groups and more, any HPV related cancer, and that's a huge amount of
Mhm.
lives and
Mm-hmm.
livelihoods that can be saved. So yes, I hope. Well, we know that anyone who's listening is already a converted, but it's just
That's
so
right.
people have got the facts as well if they do come across other people that they want to talk to about.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. So how did let's talk about your tongue. So
Okay.
you've got the forearm free flap. I see from your arm. Yep. We're,
Yeah.
we're scar bodies.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello. And you've reconstructed. So is it more than half of the tongue that you've had? Yeah, but from what I could see, about more than half, quite a bit.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, and you speak eloquently,
Thank
and
you.
you're
Thank you.
yeah,
I
it's
worked very
amazing.
hard
It's
on this. I worked very, very hard on this part. I did because I
so
wanted to sound normal.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
so what are the things that you did, or what are the things you would give people top tips on how to improve their speech?
I would definitely go to your speech therapist, go to your appointments. They will give you the starter kit. Um, but a lot of this healing part comes from within. I
Mm,
used to get in the car and drive around because COVID was here, so we didn't really, we couldn't go anywhere. But I used to drive around, turn up the radio, sing my favorite songs. Get your favorite artist on your radio and just sing.
yeah.
Make
And
make
which is great for your mental health as well,
oh, that
with
yeah,
all the endorphins.
that too, that too. But force yourself, look at yourself, force yourself to make those sounds and those words and your lips, because a lot of times you make the pronunciation on your words with the tip of your mouth, with the tip of your tongue. So
Mm,
when that is gone, it's very hard. I could not say my own name for 2 years.
mm,
The double letters, I could not say better. I could not say Jennifer. And I'm like, am I ever going to be able? It sounded funny and we used to laugh, but say your name. The words that are hard to say, just repeat, repeat. Make your mouth move to that vowel or consonant. Um,
mm. And
and
and talk as much as you can,
and what?
because I think talk as much as you can
Yes,
is really
yes.
important, because there are so many. I've had like personal conversations with patients who, maybe single, live alone, and
Mhm.
they just say, "Oh, I go days and days without talking," and I was like,
Oh,
"Whoa, that's not good.
no, no, no,
You
no.
need to talk, talk, talk." And if no one
Mhm,
is listening, it doesn't
mhm,
matter. Read things aloud to you,
mhm,
talk to your radio,
mhm,
or as you said, singing. For me personally, I get a lot of comments about my speech and how it doesn't sound any different
no,
than
you sound
before.
great.
Thank you. And one of the theories that we had with my surgeon was that I sang from a really young age, and I sang opera, amongst musical and other things,
Mhm,
and I think that muscle mass,
mhm,
just was trained from the age of 5 or 6,
mhm.
and I didn't actually sing for a really long time, not cancer related,
Right,
just life
right.
related, and I have just recently. This is a bit breaking news. Well, I say recently; it's been nearly a year, but I haven't been public about it. I've gone back to vocal coaching and like actually working with a singing teacher,
Mhm.
and it's so interesting because there's so much muscle memory in what we do, and I've had to change like that. It's
Yes.
when you're going to the minute you suddenly realize, a quarter of my tongue is no longer there, and
Yeah.
I cannot move that
Mhm,
half,
mhm,
and things sound and feel differently, and I now have to sometimes extend a different part of my mouth in order to get that type of sound. And I would just like uh, recommend to anyone to get curious and make really silly noises. And it's really fun as long no one's listening. And just experiment with your own mouth in terms of what you can do in terms of
mhm, mhm.
noises and sounds and vowels and pronunciation.
And
So
when
you
you
gave
get
a speech.
when you get to a
Sorry.
limit when you get to a limit, keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you get to
But
you're tired and your mouth can't move anymore, just keep going. Be patient. Go ahead.
yeah, unless you're a silly Billy like me, do make sure you rest, because otherwise your tongue is going to hurt for weeks.
That's another thing I was going to say is it does get very in the beginning for a solid year. It was very tiring. I
Mm.
couldn't explain that feeling because it's hard to explain. But it was like my mouth can't move anymore. My tongue is just like done. I'm done. But
Oh, yeah, I would just sound drunk, basically.
yes,
I'd sound like I was like, I'm like, no, I'm totally sober. And also, I don't know if you get this, but I just never have enough. When I get tired, I get dry mouth.
oh no, it's the worst part. It's the worst part. I've never really had cavities. And because of dry mouth, I've got cavities. I actually going to get them filled in 12 days. So,
Oh, God.
and I had also some uh, gum infection
Yeah,
and some stuff. So we had to get that worked out first. But dry mouth is probably it's the worst. I would say it's the worst part.
yeah,
I
yeah.
hate it.
And it just feels like, and sometimes I can feel like my individual teeth when I get dry mouth, if that makes sense. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, and they start to hurt. And I was like, there's nothing wrong with them, but
Right.
it's all the gums sort of
Mhm.
pulling it together. But yeah, and unfortunately, anyone who goes drink more water, that doesn't work.
No,
Um,
that's not a thing. I mean, I do.
yeah.
It's not a thing. I keep water with me, so I have it to,
Mm,
but when I wake up in the morning, it's awful. It feels like a
absolutely.
dried prune is in my mouth.
Well, you just said earlier you gave a speech yesterday,
Mhm.
and I know it's not your first one, but how does it feel to do public speaking now?
I mean, I love it. I honestly love it. I'm cancer made me more confident, which is hilarious because I cried because I look like a monster. Um, it made me more confident, made me understand my role in this world. Um, I love it. I love talking to people, especially people who have been through it or who don't understand it.
Mm,
Because again, it's changing the narrative. Like, I want people to understand when they hear the cancer word or the C word, your life's not over. It's probably just begun. Um, so I want people to not be scared. And I had to come to the conclusion or to reconciliation that I was either going to be here or not.
mm,
I did a will before I had surgery. We had conversations about, um, I'm not scared. I don't want y'all to be scared. I want you to obviously move on with your life and do it, finish up my job. Just accept that this is the way it is. It is the way it is. You're either going to die of cancer or you're going to die in a car wreck, or you're going to die of a heart attack. And what you do in between those dates is what is most important. And I had
mm,
lost that. I did not realize that this was going to be so important for people to hear my story because it's just
mm,
me. I had no choice. I could either lay down and accept that this was me, or I was going to get up and help other people and hold the hands of my friends when they need it.
mm.
And it's pretty
I
big
think you've
deal.
just put that really interestingly. I I totally hear you, and I know exactly what part you mean, because the moment I got my diagnosis, something changed. Like my life changed, the way I saw life changed, and it has also made me a better person because of that. Or it's definitely made me live life in a different way,
In a
shall
different
we
way.
say?
It's not like you were
Yeah.
mean before, but it's just
No.
different now. It's like I see what's important. I see, I had 70 visitors in that hospital room. I could not even talk.
Mm,
I had people in an ICU bed, like, strapped up to everything, and everybody's just there talking to each other. Um,
mm,
I am very, very thankful and very blessed and owe my entire life to God because without Him, I would never have had this journey with my friends and family. I mean, I just feel very lucky.
mm. As it's community, isn't it? You suddenly realize how important your community is, and how, I guess, maybe for some people, they realize they don't have community and they have to change in, or they change in that sort of way. But at the same time, I don't know how you feel about it, especially having had 4 diagnoses now. Um, I'm very conscious of that, and I don't know if it's because of the world I live in now, where cancer has become my
Yes.
world.
Right.
But I do always feel like I'm really grateful now, but what's going to happen when it is suddenly the end, um, or if it comes back, and also that fear, that
Mhm.
fear of it coming back, and how are you going to deal with it, and how are things going to be different, and how are you going to change. Um, yeah, I guess I'm still learning to sort of navigate that part of my life.
Well, and think about this. How far are you out? How long's it been?
Five
Okay.
years.
So 5 years. So 32. I've accepted that this is the way things are. And I I got to experience the things that I wanted to originally. Like my original diagnosis, I wanted to see my niece and nephew graduate. I got that. So here we are. You know, I don't like to think about tomorrow because I only have today. I only have today where I have to do the things today I'm supposed to do. Tomorrow, I'll worry about that. I'm not afraid to die. So I know that I'll be here as long as God thinks I need to be. So I'm okay with that. I know that that is, I still work with patients almost daily, mostly family, because everybody's got cancer. And I tell them like we can either do this two ways, the easy way or the hard way. Succumb to the process and let it happen, you know? Because if you
Mm,
fight it, it's gonna be worse. Succumb to the
yeah.
process. Succumb to the fact that this is your job. This is your will. This is it right here. And we either stand up and fight like hell or we lay down and die. So it's you
Mm,
have two choices. I could die before the day ends, or someone completely healthy could die today and I'll live to be 100. You just don't know. And so
mm,
again, it's the dash in between those dates that counts. I
mm-hmm,
do not think about what will happen in the future. I don't think about the next diagnosis. I only think about the next thing I have to do, you know. And I've got
mm,
my cousin right now is 45 years old. She's got breast cancer. The breast cancer showed liver and kidney cancer. Um, Now we know now that she's going to be fine. She'll have to fight. She'll have to have a big fight. She'll be fine. But I was telling her, I'm like, you have to accept that this is what it is, and fight
mm,
each individual fight. You know?
and that is true, because we can either get bitter about it,
Yeah,
or we can just, or I guess you sort of give into it and be grateful for the days that you get.
yeah, yeah.
I think it's just hard that, you know, in touch with people who only have, days or weeks or whatever, and I always felt think to myself, oh God, I don't know what to say. I can't make this any better.
Yeah,
But I know they're doing all right, because let's be honest, most people in our community, and I don't know how we've come together as such an incredible community, have such gracefulness about themselves, and
yes,
approach these things in just such incredible ways. And I know this person's going to listen to this and go like, I know you're talking about me, Barbara, but it's a reality. I'm just always conscious about, we record the podcast, we all have these individual experiences, but how does it sound to someone who's like in the eye of the storm of
yeah,
pain,
right,
of
right,
treatment, and cannot see the end of this? And I
right.
hope that the fact that we're on here, and that we have been, you know, to some extent there, that gives
Yes,
hope, to
yes.
know that hopefully there is a life beyond that
Mhm.
that is better.
And I don't. None of us want to die too soon. We don't. We don't want to leave too soon.
No.
Um, but that's unfortunately a part of life. I don't make the rules. I don't know what the rules are. I have no idea who does this, but at the same time, I only know what I feel, and I
Mm,
feel that we are here for a reason. We're all of us are here for a reason. We're here to teach each other, learn from each other, and hopefully make things better for our children and their children's children. So vaccine, 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 vaccine. And I don't know if you
vaccine.
know this, but Australia has almost eradicated it because they gave everyone the vaccine for free.
And they did. I also have to say in the UK, the vaccine is free as well.
Okay.
But the uptake is nowhere near as good as what it should be.
Mhm.
And interestingly now, with Australia, they ploughed in so much money into research, drove out the HPV vaccine, have done a brilliant job. And now there's money available to go into research to dedicate towards HPV negative tongue
Yes,
cancer,
yes.
which which weirdly enough, and any scientist listening to this will go, "What?" The majority of our young tongues community are actually HPV negative, and
Ridiculous.
every time I say that in a forum, they go like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we've done surveys. We put out the stories." HPV negative, negative, negative. No
That
one
is
can understand why.
wow.
So yeah, so there's something else going on as well.
Yeah.
But
Mm,
if the longer it takes for people to pick up this vaccine and eradicate, what you can eradicate a group of cancers, that will free up investment to research and hopefully cure other cancers, be that HPV negative or not, it's tongue cancer or not. But it's a bit, it's not just a, oh God, this is a bit of an opinion of mine, but I don't feel it's just to save your own lives and your children's life. It's a bit of a public service.
no,
There's a bit of socialism going on here. Like, let's look after each other,
I
be as healthy as we can, and
yes, yes. It's, I
it's
mean, like the COVID vaccine. I mean, it's kind of the same.
yeah,
It's like any other vaccine. It's like
yeah,
it's all, and the other thing that
measles and
yes, yes, and chickenpox and whatever else. Um, yeah, and the testing of males. Where do we stand on that? I'm like, so you can't test males, and she said you can check males. No, no, no. I want an STD test for males. So when you
mm,
go have a panel of your STD testing or whatever, or you have a Pap smear, you have HPV.
mhm.
And why do we not have a test for men? How are we?
Very true.
Why?
Very true, especially as men have way harder cancers to treat. Because statistically speaking, again, I'm always a bit difficult with those statistics because they're never broken down properly to us
Right,
actually say
right.
something conclusive. But in the sense, we do know that tongue cancer and HPV related cancers affect men more, with exclusion of the cervical cancer, if you remove that, of course. Um, and also, they usually, again, anecdotally from literature, um, have more severe outcomes or worse outcomes, shall we say, than female counterparts. Um, so yeah, so it's really interesting that we can't test HPV in men. I haven't actually thought about that, but that's really, really true.
It's what's concerning because you don't really, like you just said, and I'm going to give a little shout out to my cancer mentor, Jake Marsh. Um, he actually passed away in 2021, I believe, 2020 or maybe 2020. He had HPV tongue cancer, and it got all that worked out. Had radiation chemo, everything was fine, and got lung cancer, and passed away. Um, and that's in our group. The girls seem to be sustaining, and the men, are do not have that same outcome. Um,
Mm,
so it's concerning because if I had a son right now, well, first of all, I'd give him the vaccine. But if he was older and he was dealing with this, I mean, I would want him to be able to be tested. It doesn't make sense.
Mm.
That's what they need to work on, is being able to test men to see if they have it and what kind they have.
Well, I was going to just say what kind of strain they have, because
Mhm.
again, so for anyone listening who doesn't know much about HPV, and we mentioned it earlier, but we just really need to stress
Mhm.
HPV is everywhere,
It is.
like absolutely everywhere. And you can pass it on not just by having sex, but also, I do love this. I read this in a report, deep throat kissing, which I think is French kissing.
Yes.
I don't know how deep down the throat you have to go,
You're
but here we
probably
go, semantics. um, but it is everywhere,
the
and most
oral sex and vaginal sex
oral,
and anal sex, and yes.
and types of forms of kissing as well. So, you know, excuse me, the type of I don't know, where was I going to go with this? Oh, yeah, I just been in my the trouble I have is when it comes to STD related illnesses in general,
Mhm.
there is so much shame attached to it, because it's sort of, I don't know what the general public population's implications are, in the sense that they think of you in a way that lessens you as a human. And I know, what happened with AIDS has a big role to play with that. And it just feels like, how dare you degrade my cancer diagnosis, or anyone's cancer diagnosis, or anyone's sort of STD, even if it doesn't
Mhm.
turn out to be cancerous. Like, we're all human. We're allowed to have sex, and we're allowed to have sex with multiple partners. And you probably have HPV too, but you don't have the strain that causes cancer.
Right.
And it's I just really hate the whole notion of the shame. And last November, it was Mouth Cancer Awareness Month, and a TV program here in the UK called Lorraine. She's a lovely lady. She has like a morning show.
Mhm.
Lovely lady from Scotland, and they were talking about HPV. But her production team, or whoever, chose the headline, "Oral sex causes cancer," and that's just fundamentally not true. And also, it sort of paints oral sex in a bad way, because as if you have to be a certain, like a
Yes.
dirty or whatever sexual person to have oral sex. No, lots of people have oral sex. And like, why do we have to attach something to that in the first place? And the thing that bothered me the most about it was the reaction from the group, or what it caused. And we had individuals in our community who were shamed, fearful. We had someone wrote, "I am really worried that everyone who now knows that everyone knows I had tongue cancer. They must now all think that I slept around, or that I do oral sex, or that." Um, and I just felt so angry with Lorraine and her production team, because I just thought, I know it's a great headline, but what you are doing with it is you are broadcasting shame onto people,
Yeah.
as if it's anyone's fault that they got this in the
Right.
first place.
This is what I say about that. You can't put anything on me unless I agree with it. You're not allowed to tell me that I'm gross or a whore, or that's your problem. Like, I don't, it doesn't matter to me what you think. One of my friends, aunt, she was older. She died of cervical cancer alone because she did not want people to know she had HPV. Now, I'm not responsible for what you think about me. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not my problem you think that. I'm not going to be embarrassed. I did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. I stand by it to this day. I did nothing wrong. I was a child, basically. Um, you can only let people make you feel that way if you feel that way.
Hmm.
So, I mean, cancer gives you confidence. There's no doubt about it. You have to walk around in public looking like a friggin' monster. Like, me too. I look like I have scars everywhere, So
Mm,
it's like, this is me. If you don't like it, you don't have to be here. And if you don't want to listen
mm,
to my story, you don't have to listen to it. If you think people with HPV are gross, that is your problem. But I would watch out for karma.
mm. Well, also the fact that you most likely have HPV as well. But and again, sorry, I just realised that's the stat I was going to pull out earlier, which escaped me. Is that it's only a minute. So there's loads of hundreds and hundreds of different strains of HPV,
Mhm.
and it's maybe one or two strains. I can't quite remember. I did read them in a paper once, and they have
I've, I think like
five.
but yeah.
Yeah, and they all have very strange names
Yeah.
that you can't read. Um, they sound like Elon Musk's baby, basically. Oh, I don't know. Can I say that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so
Podcast.
it's like, yeah. So not although most of the population has HPV, not everyone will get a cancer related HPV. And I think that's really important because, again, I don't want anyone listening to this and thinking, oh my God, everyone has HPV and everyone's going to get cancer.
No.
That's not the case. Actually, a very small amount of people
Yes,
get cancer,
yes, yes. I
but the
think
ones that do,
19 or something like that. Mine was like 19, and that's the one I can't remember exactly. But yeah, just because you have HPV, in fact, if 95% of the population has HPV, maybe five will get cancer from it. You have
mm,
to have the cancer causing HPV strain for it to turn into cancer. It doesn't just go to cancer no matter what. So that is
yeah,
very important. It's and
mm,
the likelihood of you getting the cancer causing one are low. But again, it's we want to protect ourselves from HPV because again, we don't know what could happen in 30 years from now. So
absolutely, absolutely, and yeah. So on that note, um, Jennifer, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. I really, really appreciate it. I loved your message of vaccine, vaccine, vaccine,
yes,
vaccine, vaccine. And I really hope that everyone, well, I know everyone who's listening to this will take that away with them and is already telling everyone vaccine,
mhm.
vaccine, vaccine, vaccine. You definitely have put more ideas in my head in terms of who else we should invite on the podcast to go after some of those questions,
Yes.
and get some experts on to explain stuff to us in plain English so we can also understand it. Um,
Well, I've got the perfect person for you.
Oh,
No,
brilliant. I've had a couple in mind as well. So brilliant. We'll get a panel on. That's fantastic. And thank you so much for sharing your story with us, especially on a day when I'm full of cold and my brain is just like slightly here and also
yes,
in all the other corners of this room. And anyone who's had tongue cancer and then has a cold knows how triggering it is
yeah.
and how horrible it is because nothing really works.
Yes,
It just
yes,
shuts you
yes.
down.
Yeah, and thank you for everything you guys do on this podcast. It's amazing. I I love that people talk about it now because there have been many years of my life where no one did. So I love talking about it. And thank you.
Thank you so much. No, thank you. I'm just ultimately, and I always try and say that is that it's the community that makes it, and it's the same with the Facebook group and the Instagram pages and all of that. I just organize, I just like spreadsheets and
Yes, yes.
filling up my diaries, but ultimately it takes an absolutely amazing community of amazing individual humans like yourself,
Mhm.
to make this community what it is. So thank you for being here. On that note, I want to also thank our listeners, our community. Thank you so much to switching in with us again. Do, if you haven't already, give us a 5-star review, please, or 4-star or 3-star, but 5 would be preferable, and tell the world why you listen to this podcast. Follow us on our social media channels, which is at Young Tongues Global. And the next episode, Jamie will be back. You'll be happy to hear. And I think the plan is, and I'm saying this because we're actually quite a few weeks in advance here, but I think the idea is that we will be talking about the mental health impact of our diagnosis. If we end up talking about something else, ever so sorry, we'll be talking about that another day. And again, thank you so much, Jennifer, for coming on. I wish everyone a fabulous rest of your day. Bye bye.